My name is Howard McCord, and I was a friend of George Hitchcock for many years. He was a wonderful man and very important in my life as a poet. He published 3 of my books back in the 1960s. Later on in the 70s, he and I were often met at the board meetings of the CCLM. And as we were both early risers and enjoyed walking, we very often would arrange to meet at 6 a.m. and head out into the streets of whatever city we were in. And so I've walked through San Francisco, through New York City, through Boston, and with George, early morning, no one else out except the delivery men, and we had a wonderful, wonderful time. In Cambridge, he introduced me to Gordon Carney at the Grolier bookstore, and I was delighted at that time to find copies of my books there. It's the first time I'd ever been to Cambridge, and I certainly wish the Grolier bookstore was still there. I visited George when he was printing one of my books and saw him at work in his basement in San Francisco. He did an astounding amount of work alone. I know he had his collating parties, where friends would come over and help him get all those pages together, but actually the press work he did just so much by himself. And sometimes the tasks he would take on were really, I think, remarkable. He did this one book of mine, Longchamps, his Peripolis, and it has 13 illustrations by George Nama. And every page of it that had any color had to be put through the printer, the press, 4 times. And it was a book that sold out very quickly. And George said, well, I just can't bear to do that over again. So there were 1,000 copies, and that was it. But it's a beautiful book, and I was totally delighted with it. His first book for me was Fables and Transfigurations, back in 1967. And I thought one of the interesting things about it is that the cover paper, this sort of blue and crinkly white, was originally designed to wrap candy boxes in, and he had bought it surplus. And the papers for the text, a nice sort of brown, thick paper, were Army surplus Target paper that he again got very cheap somewhere. And he told me, in fact, that the one page, one sheet of very nice handmade paper that served as the end papers was by far the most expensive part of the book. The paper for that, the one sheet, cost more than all the paper put together. But this went through 2 editions very quickly, and it was a very important book for me. Later on in '71, he published Maps, and it too had illustrations, though not quite as many. They were by a friend of mine, Robert Sterling, great painter in the Pacific Northwest. And but there are only 5 of the paintings, and so it was a much easier book to print, and he did do 2 editions of that. But in the late 70s, I guess it was, I visited him when he had moved to Santa Cruz, and that was the last time I saw George. We kept in touch over the years, And he sent me his books as he finished them. And of course, I had a subscription to Kayak as long as the magazine existed. I don't think George will be forgotten, particularly by anyone whose life he touched, and he touched a great many. Thank you for remembering George.